Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Today we're talking with my very good friend and a Church Boom lead team member, Conan Stevens. And we're talking today on how to build transparency with your team. How do you have that kind of relationship with your team? It is a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Check it out. How can I serve you today?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions.
The
first one would be this. How do you identify your blind spots as a leader?
I've got a lot of them.
Yeah. Me too. That's why I'm asking.
Well, first of all, her name is Laura Sonksen. She identifies them really good for me.
Points them out. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a gift giver on the blind spots.
Okay, Laura Sonksen, got it.
Laura Sonksen.
So your spouse, right? That's an easy.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's a great question. I think it's a great question because I think as leaders we have unfortunately we fall into the trap of having blind spots in our life that we never really even realize, and we don't even understand or even know. I do think that there are parameters and guidelines probably not the right word, but parameters and boundaries that we need to self-impose in order to create the ability to see the blind spots. So someone says to me, they don't have a really transparent culture in their staff. They're not really honest with each other. Okay, no one's ever going to be honest with you about your blind spots. Yeah. I don't have a regular person that I talk to about I don't have a regular, consistent, monthly person that coaches me. Okay, well, you're probably going to have a problem getting blind spots. Yeah. So the question, the mere fact the word blind spot means you can't see it.
Right.
So if it's a blind spot and you can't see it, then who's going to see it for you? And if you don't invite people into a relationship with you and you're not that kind of person that people can be vulnerable with or transparent with or honest with, you're probably not going to have people, if that's not going to happen, they're not going to come to you with those blind spots. I think that blind spots can be exposed through people that are peers with us, people that are sort of above us, and I actually think below us as well, if the relationship is healthy and good. So I say all that to say the mere fact the word blind means I can't see it. Yeah. So if I can't see it, someone else is going to have to see it for me.
Yeah, that's good.
And so first thing I say to everybody is make sure that you create a culture in which honesty happens. Yeah. Which you apologize when you make a mistake, which you say sorry, which you say Matthew 18, where you're honest with each other, where it's not only you Matthew 18 people, but they have the ability to Matthew 18 you and peer-to-peer Matthew 18, where we're being honest with each other and, hey, this is something that's bothering you, whatever. If that culture is not created, that culture has nothing to do with the blind spots per se, but if that culture isn't created, they're not going to feel comfortable bringing up a blind spot because they're going to be afraid of how that individual is going to respond. Yeah. So you got to create the culture we can be honest with each other in a polite, in a good way, not mean-spirited, but we can be honest with each other. Secondly is you got to have someone that is over you that you invite into your life and say, hey, I want you to coach me and be a better, like my coaches. I have two coaches in my life. I taught them about ministry, I taught them about growth, I taught them about development, I taught them about leadership, but they also know they have the license to say anything to me. And once in a while they do.
Yeah. And you won't get offended.
They'll be Yeah. If you get offended, then it's probably going to limit it. Right. But it's like they'll say, hey, you might want to watch this. This is not right. This is not good. I think those are things that you have to do. You have to invite your culture. You have to create a culture of your staff that there's honesty and no one's going to get upset. You have to invite people into your life and say, hey, man, I want to get coached on being a better pastor, leader, all that stuff. But I also want you to be honest with me. And then the last thing I would say about that is none of it's going to work if you get offended all the time.
Good. That's good.
No one's going to want to come to you. I mean, it doesn't matter that Matthew 18 says, go to your brother at once, even if they get offended, you're still supposed to go to them. They just won't. People are going to keep coming to you if every time you just emotionally vomit on them and like, well, who are you? And well, what about, or it's not only getting offended,
Yeah.
it's responding with insecurity. So you can respond with a defense,
Right.
or you respond with, so defense is, I think that's pretty easy. Like, well, what do you mean? And you kind of get that attitude. And insecurity is, well, I mean, do you think other people think that? Is that the way everybody thinks that about me? It's like, dude, you start showing all this insecurity, they're going to think like, dude, I just hurt this guy's feelings. And this guy, I'm just wrecked his day. And they're going to be a lot more careful versus just listening and going, man, I appreciate the fact that you weren't mean-spirited. I appreciate the fact that you have the right heart. And I want to receive what you said to me, and I appreciate it. If that is the tone, people will keep coming to you. If it's offense or insecurity, they probably won't.
Good. You said, Chris, that really I never thought of before, but, our cultures that we create are a reflection of ourselves. And I never really thought about looking deep into the culture of my staff and my church to go, what blind spots is it pointing out of me? So that's a huge takeaway already that I'm going to, I'm always looking like, okay, here's how we need to fix it. Here's the issues, but those issues are pointing to my leadership. Yeah. So that is that our culture is a reflection of the bad parts of my blind spots sometimes. So, wow.
100%. Always is. Yep.
Let me ask you this, follow up with that. Like, once you identify that blind spot in your life, because again, we all got them. If we don't think we have them, that's a blind spot, right? So, exactly. but once you identify it, then how do you overcome it, or what have you?
Yeah. Well, I would radically depend on what the topic is.
Okay.
If it's a blind spot in how I treat people, or it's a blind spot in my family and my marriage, if it's a blind spot in my I don't know, my personal leadership or something, I think that would really create a different response.
Okay.
However, one thing I do is I'm careful with my peers, a lot less careful with people that I'm being coached by. But if I feel like a blind spot has been revealed to me through some source or another, whenever I have the opportunity, and this is a weird statement, whenever I have the opportunity to put myself on display, I do it. And here's what I mean, is I call it forced accountability. So let's say that let's say I say to you, hey, Conan, there's a blind spot. You get offended, or there's a blind spot that, dude, I noticed that you shy away from conflict.
Yeah.
I noticed that whatever, I don't know. I say something to you, and you as the lead pastor, you turn around. This is what I mean by putting on display. You go to your coaches, you go to the people that are mentors in your life, coaches or mentors in your life, and say, hey, a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, a coach of mine said, this is something in me. I think they're right. And man, if you see it in me ever, call it out in me. Please be praying with me. I want to get rid of that. And to a degree, I don't think every subject, but to a degree when appropriate, I think you're able to look at your staff and say, I had a coaching call yesterday and it really hit home with me. And I realized A, B, and C. I don't think you can do it with everything, but when you can, here's what I noticed. And I think they're right. And man, this is how I would do it with the peers. And if that has ever created any pain in you or hurt in you, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that I'm working on it.
Wow.
To me, you're putting that on display.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like going on social media, taking a picture of yourself if you're overweight and say, I will lose 50 pounds by the end of the year. Watch me do it. And you keep posting it.
Yeah.
You just invited everybody into accountability.
Yeah.
And it's actually a good thing, though. I tell people all the time, I was like, people that want to change, my sister smoked for like 35 years, and I literally she goes, I just can't do it. And I go, put it on social media.
Yeah.
She goes, why? I said, because no one will let you off the hook.
Wow. Yeah.
And once you do that, it's out there.
Yeah. Which kind of flows to my next question of like, which you kind of answered it. And I don't know if you want to go any deeper, but how transparent are you about your weaknesses and about your not blind spots that now you see are a weakness, with your team? because I realize
Yeah.
there's a fine line there of, and
There is.
you mentioned some of it. I don't know if you want to dig any deeper into that or could talk to that.
Yeah, man, that's a. I've been asked that before, and I don't know if I have a really clear answer because I feel like there's so many possible topics. I don't want. The only thing that I would say is, what I'm telling. Well, first of all, if what I'm telling them is going to ruin my career, ruin my life, they're not the people I want to talk to about it at this point. I need to talk to my mentors and figure this out. But put aside the big things. Let's just talk about more medium to small things. I would want to know the defining line is, are they going to, is this going to cause them to disrespect me? Can they handle this information? Is it going to cause them to question me? Is it going to cause us to ruin the relationship? Or are they going to appreciate my vulnerability and they're going to appreciate my honesty?
Yeah.
If someone, and this is, and I'm being dead serious, if obviously, if I was talking to a pastor later today, and I know this is pretty deep, and the guy's like, dude, I'm struggling with porn. I'm not going to tell him, go tell your staff.
Yeah.
That's just not, they can't, there's no way, in my opinion, he shouldn't have that conversation.
Yeah.
He needs to get some counseling, and he needs to have, and him and I need to start having accountability. He needs to invite people that are probably above him that can help him in that situation. I don't think he goes and tells everybody. I think he tells a specific. Now, if he says to me, dude, I think sometimes that I can come across really impatient, and I think it hurts people. It's like, okay, and man, I think I blow up sometimes. I'm like, tell your staff, because they're not shocked by it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. One, they're going to respect that you brought it up rather than disrespect. Will it create disrespect?
Yeah.
Or will it create respect?
Yeah.
Is it something that here's another one. Is it something they already know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because most of the time, impatient, dealing with conflict. Hey, I know sometimes I can be flaky. Like, they already know.
Yeah.
It's not a shock to them, So I think it's a defining line. I think every leader would answer that differently.
Yeah.
But I think respect versus disrespect, I think, do they already know it?
Yeah. Because I've seen some of that come back. I've seen it work both ways. I knew one guy, he told his team, hey, he joked about himself. I feel my leadership style is ADD leadership style. He goes to every conference, come back, but then his team, it became a disdain, almost like,
yeah,
he's always changing. And it became something that hurt him, and ended up one of the reasons they ousted him. I'm like, oh man. So,
yeah. It's probably a little too much, You have to be really a fine balance with that.
Yeah.
But I would ask, is this going to create disrespect or respect?
Yeah, that's good.
Is this something that they probably already know and they're just looking for me to admit it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this probably something that has hurt them?
Right. That's good.
If it's, then I might want to just say, hey, I've come to realize that I'm this. You probably already know it. It's probably been a blind spot in my life. It's probably hurt a couple of you, and I'm saying I'm sorry, and I really want to fix this.
Yeah.
I think they'll respect that.
Yeah. No, that's good, and that creates the culture, right?
Yeah.
Let me talk about this. So shifting gears a little bit, but a little bit on the same lines. We, as leaders, we all have strengths and we all have a lot of weaknesses. I know for me, the larger the organization, the church, the ministry grows, the more of my weaknesses that I see. And some of my strengths that used to be a strength are no longer a weakness because everything's changed. And so what percentage of time, I would say, time and energy, do you devote to your strengths and to your weakness? So maybe talk on that, developing your strengths and weaknesses. How much time and energy do you put to it? Your team sees your weaknesses. They also see strengths. And so, love for you to talk on that.
Yeah, no, I do think that, again, there's a categories of weaknesses. It is interesting. One time, man, I forgot the name of the book. It was years ago. I was reading a book, and just remembered it. It's called Soar with Your Strengths. It's an old book. If you've never read it, it's called Soar with Your Strengths, and it is all about focusing on your strengths. Now, it gave a phenomenal thing. They interviewed the ping pong coaches of Olympics. So the USA Olympic ping pong coach
Table tennis.
and the
Yes.
table tennis. Is that what you call it? Table tennis?
For the
And
real
Chinese,
players, the table tennis.
the real players.
Yeah, come on.
And the Chinese table tennis, coach or whatever over the Chinese Olympic team. And this guy, the American, would say we focus X amount of hours. If their strength is their forehand, we'll focus X amount of hours on the forehand and probably a little bit more hours on their backhand because their weakness is their backhand. The Chinese coach, and when I was reading this book, said we won't work on their backhand at all. We'll just focus 100% on their forehand.
Wow.
And the reason he said we do that is, he says, they may get a few points out in the backhand. He goes, but the second they make the mistake of going to the forehand, we win. And I thought it was an interesting way of him saying we really do focus on our strengths. I do think that I will say that when I think as a church grows, I think you move from utility to specialist, and so does a leader.
Yeah.
The bigger the church gets, the more specialized he becomes. I think it is imperative. I tell people all the time, find out what's mission critical and spend 70% of your time there.
Yeah.
Where does 70% of Coden and Stephen's time need to be spent?
Yeah, that's good.
Probably developing leaders, probably developing high capacity givers, casting vision. Like those are the things where it's like, that's you. You can't delegate that.
That's good.
Now, if your weakness is, hey, I'm not a good verse by verse teacher. I'm better at Sunday morning. I don't know if I'd spend a lot of time doing that. I think I would find people to do it. Now, if the weakness is something like, man, my weakness is I show up late all the time. My weakness is that I don't deal with conflict well. I think you have to work on that. When the weakness is going to hurt you or the team, I think you need to work on it. If it's something that can be delegated, something that can be brought up by a specialist, I think you work a lot less on it, if any.
Yeah, that's good.
So to me, the defining factor on the weakness is it hurting people? Because if it's hurting people, you need to fix it. If it's discrediting you, like, you know me, I'm just always late. Like, yeah, well, but not everybody thinks that's funny.
Yeah.
And they don't like it. I think you got to work on that. You start talking about, hey, man, I'm not great at HR. Hire someone. I'm not great at accounting. Hire someone.
Yeah.
I'm better at hire someone for that. Get someone for that. Focus on your strengths. Now, back to the mission critical. I do this whole teaching on mission critical. You've seen it before, but that 70% of your time's got to be spent on the 2 to 4 things that you should be doing. And that's where you drive in deep. Like, man, I am amazing at casting vision. I have honed in my communication skills, and I know how to foster high generosity capacity people.
Yeah.
Those are the things that none of your team is going to be able to do.
That's good. Yeah.
You're the only one that can do that. The weaknesses, HR, accounting, this, that, the other thing, I've figured out a different way for someone to do it. I realize a smaller church, they might have to play all those roles to the best of their ability, but as soon as you can, every level you go up, you do less utility and more specialist. Every level. Every level you go up, less utility, more specialist.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, got another. I'm not sure how much time we got.
Yeah.
One more question.
No, that's all right. We're good. We got a few more minutes. We're good.
Okay, and so I'll just say it's really been cool being on your church boom team, watching this thing grow and expand, and part of that. I've gleaned a lot of great things from you just watching. And one of the questions I want to throw at you, which I get the chance to watch, but how do you build around your strengths and your weaknesses in your organization? So you kind of touched on that a little bit, but I would just ask you, how have you personally done it? And then how would you advise a pastor to do that or a leader?
Yeah, no, that's great. The one, I think that another way of looking at it, we did touch on it, but I think another way of looking at it is flipping it around to say, what can't be delegated?
Okay.
That's a great question to ask, because I'm a big fan of delegate, automate, or eliminate. I always say eliminate, delegate, automate. Figure out what you need to be doing, get in your mission critical, everything else, eliminate, delegate, automate. When you can do that, but there are things that you can't delegate. You can't delegate influence. You can't delegate as a leader. You're the visionary.
Yeah.
You can't delegate that. Delegating high capacity leaders. The bottom line is, if I'm a multimillionaire attending your church, don't send me the youth pastor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk to the guy. That's the world. I've had people that are very, very wealthy in our church and in church boom relationships or in other ministry relationships. I've been in a lot of different ministries and I got a lot of, built friendships with a lot of people that they want to speak to the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't delegate that, man.
Right.
They walk in president to president. You imagine a president of a big, large company. Yeah, we're sending the assistant sales guy for what? That's just not going to work. You got to make sure that you realize what you can't delegate. So now pertaining to me, that's where I've always looked at. I just know what I can't delegate. I know what has to come from me.
Yeah.
I know I have to be the visionary. I have to be. No one else is casting the vision.
Sure.
No one's calling me up saying this is where we need to go. No one's saying I got another idea. I shouldn't say no one, but most of the time no one's doing that. You gotta be the visionary. You talk about church boom. It's like there's some business people that are starting to talk to us. There are, high capacity people that have influence, that have income, that have all that. And I just know that that's important that I'm in the relationship with them. Yeah. I can't delegate that. I can't, hey, I'm going to have some guy named Conan call you. I don't know who he is,
yeah, right.
But I want to talk to the face.
Yeah.
And in your church, you're the face.
Yeah.
They want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to anybody else. Even if the other leader's better than you, it doesn't matter. They still want to talk to the face. So when I think of things like vision, casting vision, donor relationships, communication, the voice, those are things I think that the lanes you have to stay in.
Yeah.
Those are the lanes that, even as I build out, Church Boom has been building out for the last 2 years, just really has grown tremendously. It doesn't matter if it, and it will continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm still the chief donor relation guy, still the chief visionary, still the chief voice.
Yeah.
You can't get away from that.
That's good.
And I think you have to ride in those lanes and know that. But what happens is if you don't set up the right team, you unintentionally get dragged back down into the weeds.
Yeah.
And then you end up spending time on the urgent rather than important. You end up spending time on stuff that is so much smaller than this.
Yeah.
We've
all done. Yeah.
We have all done it. And I was watching it was a TV show I was watching, I don't know, a year or so ago, and I've ended up using it a couple times in funny scenarios. But high-tech place, millionaires all in the room, this guy's the chief of this big finance company, and he's just kind of a brutal guy. That's kind of the whole thing, And someone brings up a question with 12 in the room that was so small, compared to who was in the room. And I love what he said. He goes, "Don't bring me a 50-cent problem." And I thought it was a great line. What are you, nuts, bringing that up in this room? And what happens, I think, as leader is we end up getting down into the 50-cent problems.
That's good.
Really? That sounds like a 50-cent problem.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a high-level problem. Why am I even in this conversation?
Yeah.
And we get dragged down into it. Well, someone would say, "Whoa, what, are you too good to get dragged down into it?" No, that's not it. But the organization needs me over here.
Yeah.
It doesn't need me over here.
Yeah.
And we get dragged down into the weeds, dragged down into the problems, dragged down into small little things, dragged down into solving issues. And it's like, man, not that we're above it, not that we're all that. And none of that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It just has to do with the organization doesn't need you there. If I was your board member and I came walking in and saw you on a Tuesday, I don't know, folding some flyer, and I'd look at you like, are you doing this because it's an all-team effort? Maybe I would let that slide if I was like a chief board member, or not let it slide, but not say anything to you as a friend and mentor. But outside of that, I'd look at you like, why are you over here?
Yeah.
We need you over here.
Yeah.
I'd rather you being out having lunch with a donor than over here. I mean, it's massive. Does that make sense?
We caught ourselves the other day going, we had several staff members on one thing, and I'm thinking, how much per hour are we paying to do menial? I'm thinking, dear Lord, I'm seeing the money signs like, this is so ridiculous. Okay, here's what we do, right? I read somewhere.
I've done that so many times. If I had some pastors on the line right now that have worked for me in the past, they'd be cracking up like, because I've done that so many. I go, do you have any idea how much this is costing us per hour?
Yes. No, that was good. I heard sometime they said that the average CEO, an average fifth grader, can make 95% of the decisions that a CEO makes. They get paid for the 5%, right? So
that's right. That's right.
Stay in that 5% lane.
Stay in your 5%, man. Stay in your 5%. That's for sure. Mission critical.
This has been good.
Anything else?
No, man, Chris, I appreciate it. I've got a bunch of notes here, and
awesome.
Go back and digest this. But I'm grateful for your time.
Awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. Well, no, awesome. Always love hanging out with you. Always love coaching. Always have amazing questions, and sure do appreciate you, my man.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Chris.